Welcome to the Two Boomer Women podcast. I'm your host, Agnes Knowles. I've been talking to boomer women for some time now. I suppose if I really think about it, I've been talking to boomer women most of my adult life. And that continues with this podcast, and I must admit I am loving the conversations. However, there's something else going on at Two Boomer Women these days. I'm interviewing men too, once a month where possible, and it's called Monthly Manday. These men have a message for us boomer women, and maybe you can interest the man in your life into tuning in too. Today is Monthly Manday. Sit back, enjoy, and let me know what you think. Welcome to the Two Boomer Women podcast. I'm your host, Agnes Knowles. I'm quite excited about today's episode because last spring I decided to get a man's view on boomer life, hopefully once a month. And while finding my first three men was relatively easy, finding another proved challenging until today. Now, when I'm looking for and researching guests for this podcast, I always have you, dear listener, in mind. Today, this guest caught my eye immediately. He's my age-ish. I never make gross assumptions about a person's years. He's an active grandpa, and I love my grandma role more than any other I've ever had. He's uber fit, a state that came to me later in life, and I will admit is currently quite lacking. And he's a rower, which I only did for a few years, but I can still feel the exhilaration of being in the zone with perfect team harmony, and I still maintain there is no cooler team sport. If I can digress for just a moment, my favorite story about rowing is that I was on a team of one young man with some rowing experience and three older women with no experience, and I was the youngest at 50-something. And we consistently beat teams of four young, powerful men because of our teamwork. But back to my guest. Besides all the pre-mentioned, he talks to boomers about building habitual lifestyle efforts to get healthier and stay well. He calls those boomers KaBoomers, which I love because, of course, as you know, my company name is Boom with a Bang. Dave Frost, welcome to Monthly Manday on Two Boomer Women podcast.
Agnes, thank you very much. Hey, sorry to be a challenge, but let's see if it was worth it for you.
Oh, no. Once I found you, there was no challenge at all, so that was good. Dave, your KaBoomer CV is pretty impressive. Please share your background with our listeners.
Well, I'm a Navy guy, so once upon a time I had to memorize the phrase, I was born on the crest of a wave and rocked in the cradle of the deep, seaweed and barnacles on me clothes, every hair on me head is hemp, and when I spits tar. But I'm just kidding. I was born in Vermont, grew up in New Jersey, joined the Navy, fresh out of high school, was honored to go to the Naval Academy in the Vietnam era. I'm a Cold War sailor. And after I left the uniform service, I went into industry and thought I was developing a good portfolio of hard skills and soft skills for what I did in systems engineering. But you know what? I really found out you should do what you love and love what you do, and hopefully, make enough money to keep the lights on. I loved small business. So I formed a sole proprietorship. And mid-career, I decided to form a proprietorship in something that's near and dear to my heart and something near and dear to your heart, Agnes, and that's fitness and wellness. So Well Past 40 is the limited liability company that I founded with my goal to get other people excited about joining the movement, to thrive and strive into their 90s. And I live now in San Diego, California, beautiful day today. But that's often the case. That's sort of redundant to say it's a beautiful day in San Diego. Proud grandpa, as you mentioned, the two great grandkids and our two kiddos make us proud. And hey, that's kind of why we're on the planet, other than breathe deeply, be happy, make connections, and perhaps offer something to share with your listeners. So that's me.
That's great. Every once in a while I meet someone and I have to say sort of about their life that everything has led them to this moment. And it sounds like I'm going to add you to that list.
Things have. It wasn't until I was a pudgy kid, it wasn't until the Boy Scouts made me do a pull-up that I learned that strength was important. Being at the Naval Academy, I was honored to probably spend most of my learning experience on the Severn River, working with a crew. And much as you shared, Agnes, I learned that there's no I in a crew. It's how you do together. So being in the flow, being in the zone, working together. Now, folks our age, whether it's pickleball or rowing or bridge or whatever, the social part of life is what helps keep us alive and helps us keep having fun. Intergenerational, but even with us folks that are encore aged, if we have a good hug, a good laugh, and maybe win a game or two, that's good stuff. So yes, things have kind of converged to where I'm able to do what I love what I do, and sometimes impact other people's lives. My life as a personal trainer, I sort of have meandered into a niche for helping folks with either physical or war injuries. One of the things that did get me to where I am, as a rower, I did a lot of volunteer work for wounded warriors who came back from war zones with traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, or back injuries or amputations. And with the blessing of sponsors and good equipment, we're able to get folks on the water. As Kenneth Graham would say, there's nothing so much fun as messing around in boats, no matter what your injury or your affliction is. So a lot of things did line up, but I do spend time with muscular dystrophy, MS, Parkinson's, folks who unfortunately just don't have the kit that you and I have to get on with life, but maybe we can help them be optimistic. Maybe we can help them with some life skills to prevent falling, to get out and do the things they love to do. So that's kind of the movement as I see it, and maybe I can make a difference.
That's great. Yeah. 30 years ago, I think, I took over seniors exercise class. And of course, since then, life happened. I moved out of town to take care of my aging mother, etc. I returned to this town 4 years ago. And other than COVID, I actually started leading this group again of these women. And there are so many of them still in the group from my previous time, which, add 30 years to 60-year-old's life or 65-year-old's life. Obviously we don't move around like we used to, but they are still there. There's still strength, flexibility, all that stuff. And as you say, social. It's so cool. They're just my role models, and I just love them to death. So.
But if I may pile on to what you just shared, Agnes, it's not that we don't do as much as we used to, or move as quickly, or do as much impressive stuff as we did when we were younger. In masters rowing, we only generally row against people our age. So we say that you get slower than the other people because life happens. But it's motion that counts, not how little or, oh gosh, I can't do what I used to do. My maximum heart rate is not what it used to be. That's life. And yet we shouldn't concede to the aging process. Or if we do it grudgingly. Don't concede, wave the white flag and say, that's it, I'm 60, I'm going to sit on the couch and watch TV, because that's what most of America is doing. That's wrong, in my opinion. So motion doesn't have to be fast, doesn't have to be long. Motion counts. Blue zones that well, it's daily life that works. Gardening, those kinds of things that make a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you said 60 plus, but too many people under 60 now are sitting on the couch as well. So that's so difficult.
It's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah. One phrase that caught my attention on your website, for 25 years I've commented on how on any given day my memory banks might be full and taking no more deposits today. That actually started when I had the need to coordinate 3 active teens. But you talk about physical banks. Tell us more.
Yeah, Dr. Wendy Suzuki talked about a physical 401k, and because that was her kind of term and intellectual scheme. But when you think about what we do as we look toward the golden years, you have to make deposits in order to withdraw later, or when the government tells us someday we have to withdraw from our accounts. But it's much the same with your physical constitution. And I started to think about that model of physical banking, and I came up with 7 elements of it. So the physical bank is comprised of 7 elements: strength, stability, stamina, stretching, sustenance, anti-inflammatory, clean eating sustenance, stress not, because the stress is a takeaway. That's actually the cyber thief that can rob from your physical bank. But the other is restorative sleep. So there's 6 very positive S's in the model that I use with my clients, and when I try to share with others to get excited about livelihood and longevity: strength, stability, stamina, stretching, sustenance, sleep, and stress not. Now, how hard is that? Hey, Dave, that's a platitude, stress not. We can deal with a lot of things in life by mindful breathing, knowing that 99% of life is stressful, and get over it. Not everything, I get it. But I think we can do a better job of using our body's amazing banking to do better than we do without resorting to things like pharmaceuticals. I'm kind of on a anti-polypharmacy crusade, except when things are absolutely positively needed. So yes, a physical bank with 7 elements, 1 takeaway, the stress, but 6 positive S's to build. As I quote in my book, that great jazz musician, Muddy Waters, the quote is, "Whoa, you can't spend what you haven't got." In other words, if you haven't put reserves into your physical bank, strength, stability, stamina, stretching, eating cleanly, and gotten your sleep, you're not going to be able to withdraw in your later years. You're not going to be able to win at pickleball. By the way, I also think it will help with the nimble games of whatever the mind games, the brain games are that people do to stay active with their minds. So yes, the physical bank is a model that I think is a powerful one, because people think about it. I say strength is your cornerstone. Stability is your accident insurance rider. Stretching is your flexible contribution account. The capstone is restorative sleep. That wonderful capstone of a beautiful Fed Reserve Bank is sleep. And the currency exchange is the clean eating. And then guard your wallet, because the takeaway is stress. So that model is one that I try to live by. And I hope that it's maybe not elegant, but I hope it's simple enough that people can get that metaphor, because we're all interested in our fiscal longevity, FISCAL. Now I encourage folks to be equally or more so interested in their physical longevity and wellness. So yes, physical banking. Thank you.
Great analogy, because as you explained it, I could just see like anything you do in a day that is under the good idea column is you can just literally see it in your mind of putting that in the bank. And when the stress comes in, you sort of have to do your deep breathing or whatever you do to deal with stress, because, like that hacker online is just knocking on the door.
Dear uncle, please send money. I'm a prince in Nigeria. I'm sure we've all had them, right?
I've had so many marriage proposals. You don't want to know that.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. And then the only other thing is, you were talking about pharmaceuticals and stuff, is the meme that I like most, and you've probably seen it, is the big garden with like everything in it, and it's called a pharmacy with a F instead of a PH.
Golly, if it wasn't for COVID, I think we would be more alarmed about the opioid addiction and the opioid problems. A very dear and a gent I revere, absolutely admire, a real father figure in my life, had such back problems. The doctor tried to ease his pain with opioids, and he said, "I'm addicted to them. I've got to shake it." And that's a gentleman who went through the Korean War, a war hero, a leader of men and women, and it happened to him. So I'm not saying it can't happen to any of us. I just fear that opioids are a bigger problem that we're not really talking about, because there's this other thing called a pandemic that's facing, and folks our age certainly are at higher risk because of the aging process. But we definitely want to keep our immunity up as much as possible. But yeah, the polypharmacy, why could we not work more in preventative things than Band-Aids with pharmaceuticals? And I felt so strongly about it that I used a knock-knock joke in the introduction of my book. A baby boomer and a KaBoomer come up to the door and knock-knock. And the person inside the door says, "Who's there?" It's a baby boomer and a KaBoomer. Baby boomer and a KaBoomer who? A baby boomer who may take 2 prescription pills at a time, and a KaBoomer who loves to take 2 steps at a time. And that's quite a difference. And it is a platitude, but motion is medicine. I believe if people were moving as a distraction to even chronic pain, I think it would help limit all but the most essential pharmaceuticals that big business offers to ease our pains. I think our bodies, our banks can do an awful lot on their own. I'm a layman. I'm not a Nobel Prize winning doctor or chemist, but my heart of hearts tells me, and my mind and body tell me, I do not take prescription things unless it's absolutely positively essential for livelihood.
I didn't introduce myself too well to you before we started podcast, but I'm actually from British Columbia in Canada, and currently out here on the West Coast, we're just calling it a dual pandemic because the opioid crisis is so bad out here.
Polypharmacy is just something, and again, parts of America profit from it, but the folks that either can't afford it or can afford it, I believe, are suffering, and we're passing that burden on to our kiddos because it's getting more expensive all the time. And except for the pandemic, we may be living longer, but many of us are not living better.
Yeah.
So.
And on that note, okay, so reduced energy, diminishing cognitive capacity, medical conditions, even reduced sexual ability. I think it was Betty Davis that said getting old is not for sissies. That said, examples of uber-fit, octo, and nonagenarians aren't unusual anymore. I think most of us would just be happy to come up the middle somewhere. What activities, like more specifically perhaps, would you recommend for overall benefits?
Each person in his or her encore years, pick a number, over the age of 60, Medicare age, or folks in the Canadian healthcare system, whatever we pick is the arbitrary age of encore, where maybe we're semi-retired or retired, maybe we have grandkids. Some of us are blessed, and it's a mixed blessing. Some of us are blessed not to be a first responder for our elders. Because of the toll that it takes on first responders for caring for folks in the greatest generation. But whatever the age, the key, that platitude, motion is medicine, there's none finer, except for one thing. Moving heavy stuff occasionally is the best medicine with strength training. But Queen Elizabeth, after her sainted hubs, the prince, passed away at, I believe, 99. Queen Elizabeth, God bless her, and she had longevity in her family, no doubt. The Queen Mother was over 100 or is over 100, I believe. Queen is a young 94, something like that. But she was quoted the day after the prince was put in the ground, when you stop, you drop. So my answer, it's a simple yet hard answer to move. Do you take the elevator or do you walk up the stairs? Do you take stairs 2 at a time if you can, using your big leg muscles, not leaning forward and pushing off your quads? Do you park the car if you're still driving a little further from the shopping center than you used to and take a hike? Do you do mindful breathing if things are getting you down on the stock market? September was not a good month for equities, but hey, markets go down and markets go up. And guess what? So does your physical bank. And if your deposits wither, you're not going to have the reserves to live well into your, say, 90s. Is that aspirational? Absolutely, Agnes. I'm not 90, but I do read, and I hope that my credible research shows that if you move and are smart about your essentials of life, stability, stretching, clean, anti-inflammatory eating, and the blessings of restorative sleep, which, of course, are tougher for the ladies than the guys, those things certainly better your odds to make it into your 90s and make it with quality years into your 90s. If your listeners, and I can send you the exact web links, but there are 2 extraordinary longevity estimators. Both are anonymous. Nobody's going to hack you or chase you down to your uncle from Nigeria. Just send me money. Dr. Thomas Pearl's an American doctor. has written a Living to 100 calculator. And Dr. Pearls factors in medical, family history, lifestyle, personal factors. Do you smoke? Have you ever smoked? Do you drink heavily? Do you wear your seatbelt? Do you floss your teeth? Do you take a baby aspirin? And it's a validated study, very quick, just a couple minutes, to say how long you might live statistically. Just for fun today, I did it and I was embarrassed. It wasn't 100 for me, it was 99. So I've got to stop eating red meat twice a week, I guess.
Okay.
I do love red meat, but I don't have an iron problem. And that's one of the reasons that red meat is frowned upon, other than the saturated fats, is the iron that men tend to hang on to, and that can be kind of toxic. But yeah, if I drank one less cup of coffee and took a baby aspirin, maybe it'd be 100. It's an estimator. But anyway, that's number one. And number two, the very fit Norwegians, this nation of 4 million people that absolutely astounded people at the Tokyo Summer Olympics, the 2020 Olympics in 2021 because of COVID. The Norwegians are strong. The Norwegians are fast. The Norwegians can ski forever. I can't wait to see what they do at the Winter Olympiad. But this is a nation of 4 million healthy people, a nation that eats whitefish, probably eats some salmon, but generally eats cod because that's available. It eats white potatoes. It doesn't worry as much about diet as it does about motion. And the Norwegians have a study from Trondheim, that great city in Norway. It's your ability, your heart and your lungs' ability to pump oxygen to nourish your body. And many diseases, such as the number one killer for both women and men, cardiovascular disease, cancer being it was number 2 until COVID. I think cancer slipped to number 3 because of COVID. But number 1 is cardiovascular heart problems, many of which can be aided or abetted by motion. I'm blessed to be a group fitness instructor in rowing, and I have several people who are double or triple bypass survivors who were told by their doctors, get in and start moving because it's going to keep you alive. And I think there's a real message there that we can do better by moving, by listening to Queen Elizabeth. Don't stop or you drop. So, wow. I'm not saying it's easy. It's a simple message, yet it's a very hard message because it takes time. And it takes many seasons, perhaps a year and a half to substantially improve your stamina. But if we're talking about 7 or 10 extra years of livelihood, that's, to me, for your physical bank, that's one heck of an investment. And a heck of it, you hopefully will get one heck of a return on your invested capital of sweat, your sweat equity.
Yeah, it's just as you were talking about that, I was thinking too that sometimes it might almost be an idea to make a list of those things, whether it's, parking further away and all that sort of stuff. Because of my background and because I still do a little bit of work with elder care, I tend to park further away from the door because of my background, but also because I think there's a really good chance somebody that needs a closer spot more than me should have it. But a lot of people don't have either the experience or the background. So maybe just keeping that little list, whether it's in their purse or their wallet or on the dashboard or whatever, park at the back of the parking lot, pack an umbrella if it's raining, that sort of thing, just to create a little bit more, or the far door from the mall if you're going to the mall, just all those things just to keep moving and move a bit further perhaps. And
it does add up. It does add up. And here we are, 6 or 8 weeks from the holiday season. And I think it's pretty much a universal happening, no matter what the holidays that you, whether it's an African holiday, a Jewish holiday, a Christian holiday, except for the Muslim holiday where you don't eat during sunlight. That's a long holiday. But for Judeo-Christians anyway, there's a lot of eating over the holidays. And it is a very valid point that most weight gain happens in the 6 weeks between the American Thanksgiving time and when New Year's resolutions fail in about late January. Is that 8 weeks? That's about 8 weeks. But that's when most of the weight is put on. And when the New Year's resolutions fail and resolve drops and habits are dropped and those checklists you mentioned aren't followed, guess what? You don't have as much money in the bank. You have more white fat around your midsection, which is deadly. for things like metabolic syndrome. But that, as we get toward the holiday, I would hope that people would think about eating veggies instead of sweet things at the holiday banquet. I guess now that we don't have office parties, or if we do, they're Zoom parties, drinking a lot of clean waters to fill you up a little bit, and eating good what I call vitamin P for plants. Not that they don't have calories, but the calories they have are good calories, including fiber and all the micronutrients in the world. Hey, we need calories, but we don't need empty calories with evil things like high fructose corn syrup in them. Because people put on weight and it doesn't come off. Middle age and later, it's just 2 pounds. Well, after 10 years, that's 20 pounds. And that's a tremendous, back to cardiovascular problems. That's one of the reasons why Americans have heart problems, and heart and respiratory problems is our leading cause of morbidity. I think weight is a huge part of that. Lean organisms tend to live longer. I'm not saying skinny. I'm just saying leaner. So it's a hard message, but somehow we've done a disservice in what used to be called the corn economy. A war hero, Senator McGovern, in the late 1960s, had a federal study that said fat was evil. Cholesterol is bad for you. I guess, I admire Senator McGovern. He ran for vice president, a war hero for sure, greatest generation. But wait a minute. Our body makes cholesterol. That's the mother chemical. We need it. That's not evil. What's evil is sugar, and it's evil if you don't move. So, hey, it's great for folks that grow corn, but it's not great when that corn goes to high fructose corn syrup and a supersized soft drink for the kids or for us. And hallelujah, water, bottled water. Although plastic bottle, which is another whole story about protecting our planet, the water now outsells soda in America. And thank God, it's soda was evil. So I digress, but we're coming up on the season when your listeners really, if they can on their checklist, think about eating vitamin P instead of popping those chips and dips and sweet things or if they do, get back on the healthy train real quick. It's okay to diverge once in a while. In fact, some folks say it's okay. There's an 80-20 guideline that says you can misbehave a little with your diet about 1 day a week. Maybe have a brownie, that sort of thing. Maybe have a little sugar, but then get back to the regimen. Not to be monk-like, but there is a big difference, isn't there, Agnes, between living to eat and eating to live? And it can be enjoyable, but we shouldn't be gluttons that live to eat. A great American actor who unfortunately died from massive heart problems, surprise heart problems. I'm sure there were some genetic issues, but Ed Galdolfini, if I said his name correctly, died in his early 50s from bad diet and a massive heart attack. Maybe that's the way he wanted to live. The American baseball star Mickey Mantle said, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. And we want people to take care of themselves with those checklists, let me think, this sure tastes good, but I'm talking about 7 to 10 years of longevity. If I put it in my physical bank, hopefully more people will realize it's worth the investment. It's worth the sweat. It's worth the motion. And for those of us that are blessed with kin and grandkids, it's a lot easier to stay up with them when you're fit. And, you're not too tired to go to the gym with the little ones, or, throw a Frisbee or a softball or whatever. So it is work. It is work. And I know you know it, and I'm sure most of your listeners know it. But I think your thought of a checklist is hugely valuable. Whatever it takes, folks, to form lasting, successful habits. If it's a checklist, check.
You're talking about your American holiday season. My pendulum is swinging here. Maybe you can tell me where it stops. Because just last night we had our Canadian Thanksgiving dinner, because our Canadian Thanksgiving is in October. So I'm trying to decide whether we have an extra month of weight gain till the end of January, or whether we now have a couple of months to get back on track and get rid of that dinner last night before Christmas hits, because we don't really have anything in November.
That's right, because the Pilgrims were south of the border, weren't they?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you that my admiration for Canadians with joie de vivre, with their fitness, both in my experiences, St. Catharines near Toronto and Victoria, Vancouver area for rowing. But the Canadians are very fit. Next weekend, I get to have as my coxswain the young lady who won a gold medal for the Canadian women in the Tokyo Olympics. And she just happens to be, she's bringing her Canadian women to row in Boston next weekend, but she also has time to row with us. And I'll tell you that I think, in a long-winded answer to your question, I think you folks had your Thanksgiving. You stayed pretty busy through your winter months. You had that thing called ice. And now you have indoor things like rowing machines. You folks are pretty fit as a rule. Even though you eat donuts, that's okay, as long as you burn them off.
Donuts. Oh, my God. Yeah, well, your Canadian rower will probably know Elk Lake, which is where I rowed to, because I'm in Victoria.
Okay. Beautiful spot. I was so hoping if I had stayed in the Navy longer, if I could have gone to Esquimalt there by Elk Lake. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Just beautiful.
Oh, that's great. Where do I go from here? I was going to ask you about food, but I think we've talked about food. When I was teaching healthy lifestyle a lifetime or two ago, I avoided the words fitness and exercise because they came pretty loaded, and suggested what I've been referring to today as like uber fit. You on your website use the word movement and talk about stamininety. Is that what we've been talking about, or is this a concept we should visit?
It really is, with the qualification that stamininety means you sweat for long enough to cause a positive cytokine storm, not a COVID cytokine storm, but with sweat. The biology of bliss is what one author called it. I think it was Berglund that called it sweat in the biology of bliss. When you move for periods of low intensity effort for at least half an hour, your body's chemical messengers do amazing things. And you have a little stress and respond thing going on where you do want enough stress to get the powerful cytokines to come in, restore, rebuild. And with sleep and clean eating, you're a better person in a few days after that exercise. So stamininety, that's kind of a clever word that a creative writer who helped me with KaBoomer came up with, a compound word. But the point was, if you want to make it to 90, you want to avoid the number one killer of Americans, which is cardiovascular. And how do you avoid that? Motion is medicine. Moving for at least half an hour, 5 days a week. Our U.S. government says 120 minutes of light to moderate physical activity. I ramp it up to say 180. So that's 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week. Take a day off, sure. The 80-20 rule, take a day off so that you miss it. And you will. When you get into a habit of stamininety and moving, that day off is like, geez, I can't wait till tomorrow to go work out, stamininety is a combination of stamina and making it to thriving and striving into your 90s. And it's kind of cutesy, but the point is that the number one criteria for longevity is your cardiorespiratory capability, as that Norwegian estimator shows. I shared with you that I took the living through the 100 calculator and missed the mark. And today I took the Norwegian one, and it said, congrats. By the way, it underestimated, because it's a bell curve. It underestimated my oxygen capability, which I've measured for rowing. But it said, Dave, you're not 60, almost 69. You're more like 45. I'll take that. So that's my fitness age. And if people thought about fitness age, stamininety, and strength more than they did about, listening to Madison Avenue and popping the magic pill to lose weight overnight, you probably get as many as I do every day. Delete. Exciting news from Harvard University. No, you have to do the work, and you have to watch what you put in your system. But yeah, stamininety is moving. And I say, it doesn't have to be hair on fire sprinting. In fact, it shouldn't be. We know that it's low intensity volume of motion that helps. Could be a brisk walk, it could be a light jog, it could be gardening, cutting the lawn, raking, playing pickleball. But as a general rule of thumb, 30 minutes, 5 to 6 days a week, when your heart rate does not exceed 2/3 of your maximum heart rate. So it's really good for your listeners to remember what your resting heart rate is, and you can estimate how fast you should walk to keep building stamininety. So our left ventricles are extraordinary when they're working well. And that's our goal, is to make that one of the most powerful muscles in your body, just pumping out nutrients as much as it needs, building in volume and when you need to, building in heart rate. But the way you build capacity, those little mitochondria, the little power cells in each of our skeletal muscles, that mitochondria, it gets multiplied with low intensity motion. And we build more capillaries. Isn't that amazing? We have 60,000 miles of blood network, and we can build more with low intensity movement. Now, hey, Dave, that's 3 hours a week. And I'm arguing, well, you're going to get more than 3 hours of added longevity. And even if you didn't, your life would be better. You'll sleep better. You'll eat better. You'll have more mojo. It's the effects are so profound. We're just not getting Americans to move as they should. And it's not just people my age. Unfortunately, it's young people. Obesity is alarming in young people as well. So we have a real endemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it. White fat is killing Americans. It's not good.
Well, before I hit record, as you know, I was trying to settle my dog because she had a barking spree. And as much as she can at times drive me crazy, I often joke that not only she makes sure I get out on a brisk walk, I also get an upper body strength workout, because she's the only dog I know that got kicked out of puppy school and training. So she pulls. So I'm constantly, and I change arms just because it gets too tiring. So between the walking and the holding her back, I often joke that she's probably the best workout machine I've got.
Oh, and hey, just the payback is a pat on the head and rub the belly, right? It's just wonderful. And it's also extraordinarily good as we get older, and particularly if the winter months are long and dark, having a companion inside that doesn't talk back to you and just wants to be loved is pretty special too, right? Yeah. There's a reason why dogs in particular, I guess maybe because cats have too much of a mind of their own, but wounded warriors and severely injured people often perk up when they see a dog, and a working dog in the hospital. So I just think that's amazing.
I'm going to digress for a second. Have you ever heard of explore.org? It's nature sort of cameras. There's cameras all over the world. They're live cams. And one of the live cams is at Warrior Canine, and they raise these puppies specifically for soldiers who are returning with, stress and things like that. And just watching the puppies on a monitor, you just can't help but lose a bunch of stress, let alone, as I'm sure, just having one come into your life would just...
We're now learning how critical that is, and it's just unfortunate we're not able to grow the scale of that program. We hear people flying on airplanes with their comfort dogs and that kind of thing. I think you and I are talking about a little more than that. We're talking about life-saving companionship but it is expensive to train those wonderful beasts, and I just hope we can keep doing it.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we've covered what to do. We've covered why to do. And in many ways, our listeners probably know deep down inside it's necessary. It's a great idea. The how to get started can sometimes feel insurmountable. What tips do you have for our listeners?
And again, I've used platitude a couple times today. Simple things can be hard. If you have a towel and a water bottle that hopefully isn't BPA or plastic, you're ready to go. Pick goals, either make a checklist, find a workout buddy. Perhaps you're able with your health care plan to have some healthcare providers in the States have silver sneakers, which are group fitness, wellness, yoga, stretching kinds of things. Whatever it takes to start moving. For me, I admire Queen Elizabeth with all the challenges she's had with the royal family. She says you stop, you drop. So don't stop. Just do what you can. Be aspirational, but pick reasonable goals. We know that at any age, if people go out too high, too hard, too fast, they may get hurt. They may get frustrated. They may say that wasn't fun. So we want to make it fun. Do what you love. Pickleball, walking the puppy, rowing. Do what you love. Do it by yourself or solitude, or do it with friends for the social aspect. There's a reason why some studies say social sports, pickleball, tennis, group running, group jogging, are indicators of longevity. It's the social aspect as well as the stamininety. So that should not be underestimated by any way, shape, or form. But the point is, every one of us is an athlete. Every one of us, very few of us are going to make it to the Olympics or the Masters World Games. I'm blessed to go to those a couple of times. But the point is, do it. Don't have to apologize. Affirmations are really important. Look yourself in the mirror. Do I want to look like this tomorrow? Or can I look a little better? Can I be more positive? Maybe my face gets a little thinner, which is often generally a thin face indicates that your central obesity is not real high. So looking at the man or woman in the mirror is a good way to either jumpstart it or have somebody remind you that you're doing something positive. So grab a towel, grab a clean water bottle, and move to sweat 5 to 6 days a week, and lift the grandkids, lift that heavy suitcase now that we can travel again on airplanes, and be positive. It is not easy. No, I would never say easy peasy. That sounds like Madison Avenue. I will say it's hard. A wonderful gentleman I admire, Tom Hanks. He's a baby boomer. He's a diabetic. He's one of the hardest working people that I know in the film industry. He says, do the work. And the work is moving. And it doesn't have to be, climbing Mount Everest. But it does have to be changing your body composition, changing your cardiovascular system, and living better. So each individual is different. And I would only offer, Agnes, that because of that, if anyone is uncertain about how to take that first step, find a friend, find a senior society, find some fellow boomers and say, what do you do? Gosh, you're bounding about. You're looking very frisky today. What's going on? And then hopefully they'll say, come with me, So a workout buddy, be it a puppy or a significant other or a friend, often is the way to help you get started and make you accountable. Yeah, some people love to work out on their own. Some people love to do it in crew settings. Whatever it takes, just move.
And now we've determined that you're a Southerner and I'm a Northerner. And the one thing I will add to that is several years ago, I blew out my knee. So when winter comes and we get snow and ice and my dog still wants to be walked, I put on my snowshoes. They've got the little grips on the bottom.
Wonderful activity. Just shushing, as long as you dress appropriately. And we're so blessed that modern technology, if you can afford some of the name brands, they're really good for breathability, warmth. But yeah, even in the cold weather, we want to remind people to drink. You can still get dehydrated in the dry, cold winter climate. Just because it's cold doesn't mean you can't move, and doesn't mean you shouldn't move. You should, for sure. You should, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go sideways on you, Dave. Before we close, there was one sentence on your website that caught my eye because it was also a subject that's of interest to me and didn't seem to directly be part of your wellness focus. The sentence says, he also writes academic papers about 21st century workplaces and knowledge workers as those most valuable players. What's that about?
Yeah, I am honored to be an adjunct faculty member, and this particular bit of writing was for a book about knowledge workers who unfortunately have some of the, believe it or not, they're related. A couple things. Knowledge workers, as a rule, are responsible for their own development. And boomers are responsible for building their own physical bank. Nobody's going to make them do it. There's not going to be a mandate. I shouldn't say mandate, should I? We just had one for vaccines, but knowledge workers are those that we don't do as much machinery and farming as we used to. We do a lot of information services and so on. Google and Apple, those kinds of corporations that are now driving the economy. I was fascinated by some of the words of Drucker and others that say you are responsible for your own future. Oh, by the way, the average knowledge worker only puts in 3 hours a day of real work. Now they have meetings, they're Zooming, they're doing this, doing that. But in the idea of physical banking, knowledge workers have no excuse for not working out 30 minutes a day when you only work 3 hours a day. So I'm an adjunct professor, and that I was asked to write that article because I'm really passionate about soft skills and personal development. But isn't that what we're talking about for staying well past 40 and building stamininety? You are responsible for your own destiny. Yeah. Whether you think you can or cannot, you're right, as Henry Ford said. So think you can and be responsible for your own longevity.
So when I read the sentence, I was puzzling over it, and then I decided, which is not quite right, but that's okay, that knowledge workers were we older folk who are still in the workplace, some of whom are still in the workplace, so they have the knowledge. But interesting, so it does, in fact, the knowledge workers in your meaning of it here, it does tie in many ways to what you're doing with your stamininety and fitness.
You bet. And avoiding nerd necks or tech necks from leaning forward. Ergonomics are so important. Working from home, we heard about people with back problems and neck problems because they had their laptop on their lap sitting on the bed, and then they wonder why they have upper back pain. So ergonomics are part of your physical bank for using screen time wisely, turning the screen time off before you go to bed so you can sleep well. So yes, whether the knowledge worker is older, and what we're finding out now, particularly with America not having enough workers, I certainly get more job opportunities now when I'm not interested in working for corporate America than I did, 10 years ago. So things... But the point is, because we're not using our hands as much for farming, manufacturing, why don't we use our hands for moving stuff, holding onto that puppy so that you're doing something good for you? So it's self-determinism, I guess, is wrapping around that.
And the most latest one, of course, is with COVID and working from home is Zoom butt. So as we sit here on Zoom.
Yeah. Well, we could stand up. But dormant butt is butt syndrome, DBS. That's a pretty formal term if we're allowed to use the 4-letter word butt on the air. It is evil. And, the old thing about sitting is the new smoking, there's a lot of truth to that. It's not just sitting. If you move and you're using your legs and you're using your core muscles to sit tall, that's okay. But the gluteals need to take the pressure off. So we encourage people to squeeze their buns, shift their legs, sit tall, and don't get the forward head tilt or nerd neck. If your livelihood comes from a screen, embrace it, but get away from it. It's also good for making sure your eyes are rested and you don't have problems generated in your brain from too much screen time. And we all know it. Turn the screens off well before you hit the hay so you can sleep well. Our minds are so active that we're still thinking about email or tomorrow's agenda. We're not going to be as mimicking Morpheus. Isn't that funny? Morpheus, morphine comes from that little Greek, not a god, but that little Morpheus was had fun in the bedroom. And part of that was sleep, but somehow morphine came from that as well. So there's a message that you can generate your own happy hormones by restorative sleep. Mimic Morpheus.
Well, and hopefully, too, our age helps us turn the screens off a little bit, too, because, I spent most of my life not having screens. I didn't have a television until I was a teenager, like all that sort of stuff. So.
Those were happy days, weren't they? I mean, now you look back and say, how did I fill my time? And it was probably reading or handiwork or social things. Isn't it funny that the word social media now is looked at as being unsocial and doing unfavorable things with platforms like Instagram? We don't need to live by screen. I mean, if we work 3 hours a day to generate income, that's one thing. But I don't know why folks spend so much time on what I call on social media. It's probably worse than a waste of time, in my opinion. But
Well, my friends and I have this funny little quirk where we actually still use a telephone if we want to talk to each other.
isn't that a novel thing? The plain old telephone system, POTS. And there's something about, it's one of our senses, audio. And when all the videos in the world on Instagram don't make for heartfelt sentiments, and it's just letter writing and good old vocal communications to me are withering and shouldn't. So,
Well, and if you're anything like me, listeners, every time I'm on the phone, I can't sit still. I pace. I've been known to put on a couple of thousand steps in my house just wandering around because I don't sit still. I pace as I talk. So
the walking meetings are wonderful. I mean, with the blood flow, probably clearer thinking, less brain fog. The mind-body alignment is much better when you're on the move. Not driving, but walking. Yeah.
Okay, Dave, you've also written a book.
My first book, although there were academic writings, as you mentioned, Agnes, but my first work was independent, published in June of 2019. Always thought it's always a great idea to publish a book, launch a book in the middle of a pandemic, but there's some things you can't control. But I acquired a lot of personal lessons, and I'm kind of a nut for deep diving into research. So I came up with what I started off as an almanac, sort of, if you will. Some folks may remember the running craze of the 70s and 80s and Jim Fixx. FIXX, The Joy of Running. Well, I started off with kind of the theme of an almanac of the joy of sweating, and eventually with help from creative and content editors came up with KaBoomer, Thriving and Striving into Your 90s, with terms like stamininety and so on. It was I felt I had a book in me. I am in the same family tree as Ralph Waldo Emerson, who talked about the felicities of age in 1863. And if nothing else, I owed it to the family to put a book out. So it is a lesson dealing, guess what, with the physical bank. 7 main chapters: strength, stability, stamina, stretching, clean eating, restorative sleep, mimicking Morpheus, and stressing not. Also talks about things that you mentioned, such as the importance of testosterone for both men and women as we age, because our bodies tend to slowly wind down, or sometimes rapidly wind down, in the biochemistry that had us vital as teenagers and in our 20s and so on. So my own personal experiences of sleep, I would share when I read that two boomer women, easy for me to say, hopefully I had something to share. I learned I have a sleep disorder. 1/3 of all men have sleep disorders, but very few of them get it diagnosed. Believe it or not, after menopause, women have the same percentage of sleep disorders. So if your listeners, it's just snoring a little bit. No, we're talking about sleep disorders, which may or may not be related to snoring. It is also true that women pretty much have the same problems with cardiovascular that men do. It's not just men and their hard living, hard drinking 2 scotches and a big steak for lunch. It's not. Cardio affects all of us. So I would offer those 2 things. And I would also offer a third thing when it comes to strength. The standards from the Australians, the Canadians, and the U.S. governing bodies for sports that use weights as part of their training, the standards are the same ratio to body weight for women as men. So women don't have to think that they have to move stuff the way guys do. But women should think that they can move stuff in the same percentage of body weight that guys do. For instance, a lady untrained in weight training should safely be able to do a dead weight lift of 3/4 of her body weight without any practice at all. And that's the same ratio as it is for men. And then as you get fitter and train your muscles and joints and bones to handle the load, it gets multiples of your body weight. But I just wanted to share that strength is something that women should not take lightly. And they should be able to perform at a percentage ratio of body weight as men do. Women should get excited about their fitness age, not their calendar age, except in America, women love to be carded. You know, when somebody says, I say your ID to see if you can have an alcoholic beverage, that's okay. But on the flip side, I'd hope that your listeners will be very excited about lowering their fitness age for good reasons. Can you get up from the ground without using your hands like you used to do when you were a kid? Can you stand on one leg with your eyes closed for us, 20 seconds is a wonderful guideline for stability to prevent falling. So fitness age is really important for your listeners. And please, please, please know that you do or do not have a sleep disorder, because that can kill people. You know, it causes strokes and all kinds of bad things. So it's a much higher prevalence than is treated, unfortunately. So all that rambling by Dave, hopefully your listeners know that, in my opinion, physical banking is just as important as fiscal banking.
Well, and I will add to all those women out there, if you're having trouble lifting your 30-pound grandchild, do not go out and try to lift 3/4 of your body weight today.
Just know that it's capable, and yes, we can. It doesn't mean we can today. It just means that yes, we can. And it's something to which we should aspire, because sarcopenia sounds evil, and it is evil. That's the loss of skeletal muscle, which leads to bad things like poor breathing, poor digestive habits, falls. So moving stuff like grandkids, holding on to your puppy, it's in the art of the possible. And I hope more ladies would get excited about doing it.
Where do we find you online?
I have a website. It's wellpast40.com, and it's I hope to offer a lot of information, resources, things I've come across that I think are worth sharing. So wellpast40.com is the website. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, even though I talked about antisocial or on social media. When I find articles of interest, I do try to launch those so that others might find them. DEFP Trainer is my Twitter address, and on Instagram it's KaBoomer Koach with 2 Ks, KaBoomer with a K and Coach with a K, just to be a little cute. But the website is probably a good place. And on the website is ways to contact me, to join the movement, to get on the mailing list for opt-in resources. If you'd like daily tips and tricks from this KaBoomer, that's a way to do it. Opt in via text message. So thank you. Those are ways that people are interested in learning more. They could get in touch with Dave.
That's great. Those links will be in the show notes. I think we always do that. And listeners, I do recommend you check out Dave's website and blog as he talks about what we've chatted about today, tongue-tied here. But he also blogs about other boomer-related subjects. I got lost in there this morning, so that was kind of interesting. If you have comments on today's show, you can leave them where you listen to podcasts or at twoboomerwomen.com/join-the-conversation. If you want to be a guest on the podcast or know someone who would make a great guest, there's an application form at the website too. And while I'm chatting here, I want to give a shout out to Gail from South Africa, who gave us a shout out. Yay, thank you, Gail. Dave Frost, thank you so much for joining us today on Monthly Manday on Two Boomer Women.
It's certainly my pleasure. Thank you for chatting about things that are near and dear to your heart and my heart. And I just hope that folks can realize, whether you think you can or cannot, you're right. And yes, you can. So even if you need help, go get it, because it's important.
There you go. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of week.
Thanks so much, Agnes.